We are going through the Liberals' new spending plan with a fine-tooth comb to highlight the most important details affecting you and your finances. Chrystia Freeland's second budget allocates $10 billion to help make housing more affordable for Canadians. $4 billion will go towards launching a housing accelerator fund to help municipalities build up to 100,000 new homes over the next 5 years. People struggling with housing affordability will also receive a one-time $500 payment. Also included is a $500 million commitment to providing more military aid to Ukraine, plus $1 billion in loans to the Ukrainian government via the International Monetary Fund. The finance minister also says the government will continue to chip away at the deficit over the next few years, lowering it from more than $52 billion this year to just $8 billion by 2026. For more, let's bring in CBC News National Affairs editor Chris Hall joining us from Ottawa. Good to see you, Chris. Now it's time for the morning after analysis. So why don't we start with the dollars and cents? So what stood out for you on the financial side of the budget?
Well, this has been portrayed as a moderate budget, and compared obviously to the pandemic budget of last year, it is far less intensive in terms of spending, but it's still significant. $60 billion around that figure in total, offset by some higher than expected revenue, so a total of about $30 billion new dollars to be spent. You went through the list of the priorities. Instead of sprinkling money like fairy dust around, Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, has really focused on those three key areas, or 4 or 5 key areas that deal with the things that came up during the election campaign. The lack of affordable housing in this country, trying to kickstart both the supply and building of housing, but also giving prospective first-time homebuyers some breaks to try and save money for that first house. There is the military. The Ukraine invasion by Russia has obviously changed the dynamic in the international world here, and trying to help supply Ukraine with weapons is a key part of this. A total spending, interestingly enough, that doesn't really give us details on what they're going to do to defend continental security. There is an expectation that the Arctic will see some upgrades, particularly those NORAD radar stations that are sadly falling into disrepair. So we're looking for some more detail on that. And lastly, it's the green transition. Economic growth is a big key part of whatever a budget would set out. And they're looking at trying to kickstart sort of that transition to a low-carbon economy with 2 new agencies. One is an innovation agency, another one called a Canada Growth Fund. Not a lot of details in those either, Jennifer. We'll look to see how they flesh out. But the idea here is to help give an incentive to the private sector to begin investing in that area of the economy.
Chris, we know this is also a political document. And, gone this year, the drama of will the government fall, a minority government, because of that deal with the NDP. But let's talk about some of the politics at play here.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, came out right away and said they will be supporting this budget, even though it doesn't address some of the things that he would like. What he did get is there's going to be a dental plan. You mentioned it, $5.3 billion over the next 10 years to kids who are under 12, whose families meet an income threshold. So that's a big key demand of the NDP. There is that one-time tax on bank profits and insurance company profits in excess of $1 billion, and a smaller tax going forward. Another key area of the NDP's demands in order to reach this agreement to keep the Liberals in power until 2025. The Conservatives, on the other hand, see this as all about spending, not enough about reducing the deficit, not about paying down debt. So there is that clash we will see unfold over the next several days their break next week, but when this debate continues in 2 weeks' time about where the future of the country lies, whether there's too much spending still, and whether enough attention is being paid to retiring the debt and to paying down some of the accumulated debt that's been put in here by Chrystia Freeland in the past years to deal with the pandemic.
Chris, that is the state of affairs, the state of play, this budget as of today. But what are the risks that could derail this plan?
A couple of economists, including former parliamentary budget officer Kevin Page, pointed out that some of the economic assumptions that Freeland and her department are making are really out of date for 2 reasons. One is the invasion of Ukraine. It is really potentially triggering a recession in Europe that could have an impact on Canada. but also inflation, Jennifer. Inflation, even the government officials we talked to yesterday suggested that inflation, high inflation, 6, 7, 8% could be with us well into next year. So that could change the profile for this budget. A lot of people worry too that there is no contingency fund, no rainy day fund in case another surprise comes. And certainly we've had enough of those over the last 5 years to prepare for the unexpected. So we'll hear a bit about that too, about whether or not the assumptions that Chrystia Freeland is making include the possibility that what she is forecasting may be hit broadsided by another world event that we just can't anticipate at this point.
Chris, thank you as always for making sense of it all for us. Chris Hall in Ottawa.
All right, thanks, Jennifer.